thank you, Mike, for joining today. We've had several conversations over the last couple of years. You've been a great Honeit customer, and wanted to kind of schedule this time with you to learn a little bit more about Onboard, like talk about the state of recruiting, kind of lots going on. Maybe just as a kind of a quick introduction, would love to hear a little bit more about your company and yourself, how you got into recruiting.
Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be on. And man, I'll tell you, our company Onboard, we are a full-service engineering design firm. We're a family of companies, so it includes an engineering design firm, EPCM, that's been around for 45 years. We're family-owned and operated. We're based in the Northeast. We have a lot of customers in the chemical industry, specialty chemicals, power industry, other manufacturing companies. That was our first company 45 years ago, and we're still family-owned and operated. But since then, the last couple decades, our company has grown and grown additional companies that kind of all work together with our engineering firm to service customers in a different way. And so we have a staffing agency, a professional search firm. We have a product management outsourcing company that comes into a manufacturing site, and we actually might put 150, 200 employees at that site, an HR manager, program manager, safety manager, and we might actually manufacture the product for the client. So we have that. We have an industrial solutions company that does some construction management. So for some of our projects, we'll actually do the design and also then the construction of the project. And these are typically industrial design projects. So a lot of the recruiting that I do is related to those customers. And it's a lot of capital project management, capital project engineering, construction managers, project managers, and so when customers have kind of niche needs, I think one of the things that we kind of specialize in is, engineering, scientific, professional. So when we've kind of designed have a reputation now where when customers have some hard needs when it comes to, finding mechanical engineers or specific project managers or need construction managers, they kind of come to us for those solutions, and we can do that either as a contractor or as direct placement.
Wow. So that's fascinating. I mean, not only are you kind of sourcing and putting together the people that will do the work, you're probably hiring the project managers, the program managers. I mean, you're taking on the whole project, not just helping them kind of do what they are hoping to do. Like you're actually doing the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, it's complex. We're very flexible. We offer flexible service. So a lot of our competitors are very rigid in how they offer their services. We tend to be more flexible. Flexible service is kind of our motto. So we kind of bend to the customer's desires. And I think that's kind of given us a great reputation in the market. That hey, if you've got something interesting, something different, something complex, something that needs to be structured a little bit differently, hey, Onboard can handle those really well.
Have you found that since you do kind of stand out as a great provider, that you get some inbound for candidates that you might not normally get? I mean, when you post a job, do people know Onboard, candidates are applying, things like that? Or do you still do most of your work kind of sourcing candidates and building those pipelines?
I think it's definitely a mix of both. Okay. Our reputation and referrals network is pretty strong. So we do get some good referrals from customers. And we've had relationships with our customers for decades. So, people we've been working with for so long, they tend to continue to come back to us. Or, if they move to another company, then that helps us get connected with that company, just because we really put the relationships first with our customers.
And in terms of your background, Mike, how did you get into recruiting? How did you find this company?
Yeah. Brief story on that. I guess I got into recruiting, not necessarily by accident, but my background's in business and marketing. I was a professional baseball player for a little while after college, in independent baseball competitively. I got my first job professionally as a media buyer doing newspaper buying, which gave me a lot of good administrative skill sets and negotiation skill sets. I did that for a few years, and I was really looking for a sales type position to evolve into because I felt like it was a good skill set. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in sales and but I knew I wanted to be passionate about the product I sold. And then through a friend connection, a family friend that was here at Onboard, I got connected with this opportunity. Hey, you should check out recruiting. It's kind of like sales. And I'll tell you, the first day I went on the job, I sat down with my recruiting manager at the time. She walked me through essentially what this was, because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I just knew it was like a sales type job and there was a good earning potential. And as soon as I saw how it functioned and how we were helping people get jobs, and not only the personal relationship side of the business, but also the technical side. You know how you have to be really savvy with, with email, with computers, with searching, with Boolean. I mean, once I got a glimpse of that and the balance that was in recruiting, I was like, I called my wife up on the way home. I said, honey, I'm going to love this job. I'm going to love this profession. So it was kind of like love at first sight. And then from there, I really took on just a lot of self-learning to say, how can I get better? As an athlete, I was just always wanting to get better at whatever I'm doing. And so I kind of took that in my profession too.
Wow. So have you applied some of those principles around, working out and rigor and structure and things like that you took
100%. I'm always looking for things that are uniquely better. Like, for example, Honeit. When I first saw Honeit, I knew that was a uniquely better way to interact with candidates, that it was going to give me more opportunity to have better conversations, to capture those conversations, to have those conversations searchable later, to promote those candidates to managers, to have a better candidate presentation, to accelerate the process. So yeah, like when I saw that competitively, I knew that was going to be a competitive advantage to help me and our brand here at Onboard to have an edge when we present candidates versus some of our competitors. Sometimes, we don't have exclusivity on the jobs that we're getting. And so we're competing against other firms that are trying to find the same people. And so if we're always presenting not only quality candidates, but also quality candidates that are very polished, that are presented in a way that the manager can digest easily, and kind of really know if they like the candidate, then it's going to give us that advantage. So yeah, I think, and when it comes to everything else, like other tools or just how I structure my day or how I'm trying to get better, sourcing, recruiting. Yeah, I'm pretty avid at learning and trying to keep up with the industry trends and the newest technologies for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, that's great. Yeah, I think most people kind of fall into recruiting. I mean, it's a common thread when you talk to recruiters, like, nobody really knows this profession exists when we're in college, right? Nobody really sets out, but I've had a lot of friends and even, cousins and things like that kind of stumble into this. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, and I think you're right. You're learning, it's a people business. So you get to talk with people, which is, if you like talking to people, that's great. But I also got really interested in just learning the business behind business. Like, when you start to place these middle type roles or these accounting roles or these technical roles, you're like learning how finance or companies are structured. Or to your point about technical, you're learning about how software is built, or in your case, you're learning about how polymers and how chemicals are created, and all the people it takes and all the machines it takes and all the process it takes. And it's just like, it's kind of an infinite spout of interest and curiosity, depending on the client, depending on the rec, depending on the role, the team you're supporting. So I remember that was fascinating. It kind of motivated me to go back to business school, actually. And I was like, learning about business and kind of, from tangentially, and I was like, gosh, I really want to actually go take some accounting courses or, get an MBA to go a little deeper there. But, excellent. What, talk to me a little bit more about you touched on Honeit a little bit, but your HR tech stack kind of in general. Like, I assume you're using an applicant tracking system there. Are you using some back-end HR tools? And then also, I wasn't sure if your role kind of crept into HR or there's a separate kind of HR team that would manage that.
Sure. Good questions. I'll address the latter question about our, how we're structured here. We're structured as full cycle recruiters. Okay. At our team here. So, I mean, we handle everything from, client intake, all the way through job ad creation to posting the job ads to sourcing the candidates, to interviewing and pre-screening the candidates, presenting the clients, scheduling interviews, getting hired, offers out, doing the onboarding paperwork, first day instructions, follow-up, post-placement. I mean, we're doing it all. And we don't have, the way that we're currently structured, we don't have like recruiting coordinators or onboarding specialists. We're starting to kind of, I think, move in that direction, which I think will be helpful for efficiencies. But right now we're very high touch on the client candidate side. And we carry the full function all the way from the beginning until essentially getting them all the way through their paperwork. HR approves their paperwork and clears them for hire. And then, we do first day instruction. So like after that, then payroll and everybody else takes over for actually getting them as, to become an employee if they're a contractor, for example. But yeah, we're handling that full life cycle.
Wow. So HR then steps in once the paperwork's signed, they sign their contract with you or with the client. And then, do you payroll them, or I guess do you do, freelancers or contingent contractors, or do you just do placements as well? Okay.
We do direct placements, but I mean, for most of what we do is a lot of contractors. So it's, where they become our W-2 employee, and then we contract them. They're contracted to work with one of our clients. So they become our employees. So we do all that, all the HR paperwork, the Form I-9s, the, tax forms and everything. We get all that captured. And then once they become our employee, they go through our system with HR. But basically, the HR's function is not in the onboarding process. It's actually been on the recruiters since I've been here at Onboard, and it's we carry it all the way through. So you can imagine. I think there are probably some other full desk recruiters out there. You can imagine how our full cycle recruiters, I should say, how you've got a lot of different plates spinning all the time between scheduling candidates for interviews, getting candidates onboarded, following up on this guy with paperwork, replying to that manager, sourcing a candidate, pre-screening, soliciting.
When you say it all, you realize how much goes into that. When you just list off all of those things, you're like, that's what makes recruiters a little cuckoo and crazy at the end of the day, because it's people, and then it's all that process, and you've got candidates that you're wanting to represent and worried about and asking you, and you've got clients that are worried about, and you're kind of between these two.
And prioritizing that too. Like, for example, I got to the point where I had to make a hierarchy. Like I have I laminated a sheet here that essentially has if I'm stuck, like what do I do right now at 12 o'clock in the afternoon? Like I could look at this. Okay, do I have a priority 1 item? No. Okay, do I have a priority 2 item? No. Do I have a priority 3 item? So it gives me some kind of centered, like for example, number 1 is extend a job offer to a selected candidate. So like,
don't wait on that. Don't wait on that.
More important than for me to actually extend a job offer if I have one to extend. So if I don't have a job offer, my next thing would be I'm going to post a new job. I'm going to create an ad, post a new job. If I don't have that, then I'm going to look and see if somebody's responded. A candidate has responded to one of my messages. I'm going to then email them or follow up with them, schedule a call. If I don't have that, I'm going to submit a candidate. Actually, I've kind of tinkered with the order on this. I'm just trying to figure out what should be the highest priority when you have all these different tasks that all simultaneously are important. I think that's what you have to juggle as a recruiter, trying to prioritize your day. And that's where technology comes in too, because the better technology has gotten for us in our industry. There was a worry years ago that, technology is going to take over and recruiters aren't going to be necessary. I'm certainly on the side of the fence that think recruiters are always going to be necessary, because it's a people transaction. I mean, it's you have to deal with people and emotions and relationships to get somebody to change jobs or take a job. I think that's always going to need to involve people and some element of persuasion. There's like an art to recruiting in addition to the science. Like as Greg Savage would say, it's an art. You have to be persuasive and seductive and clever, and you have to really show the candidate that you care and work them through the process. And so, but the thing is, on the technology side, the more the technology is able to get us to accelerate some of these other mundane functions, I mean, then it's going to leave us more time to be on the phone with candidates, to be working on the relationship side, which is actually moving the ball down the field with every candidate and every customer and every client. So I'm always looking for, and I think our company does a good job of trying to identify areas where we can grow there and assess technology. We actually have a technology manager, Kyle Miller, who basically has the responsibility of our entire tech stack. And then he's actually constantly evaluating new tech that's coming available and kind of really doing the demos and understanding if we should then implement that with our entire team, and putting the business case together for leadership to say, hey, this is going to give us X amount more productivity or efficiency or, in our process. So he's constantly looking at our process and evaluating tech stack. So, I mean, what we have right now, I think, is we have a really good system. We use JobDiva as our ATS, okay, which I'm a fan of. I mean, it's very comprehensive. It meets our needs for doing the full cycle really well, and it's got some really good back end, I think, integrations with a lot of other tools, and it has some really good just sourcing capabilities within that, all within that platform itself. So I think that's kind of a good advantage for us. But one area we haven't really gotten into is like the AI sourcing tools and other things that are a little bit newer, which I think could be helpful for us, or could be something that we can get into in the near future here to add to our stack. But we've got access to a lot of different job boards, a lot of different, for posting and for, pulling resumes, harvesting resumes. Our database is growing, pretty extensively. We've got a lot of harvesting happening in the background, pulling resumes automatically. So,
oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing some of the AI stuff kind of on the back end, but not proactive, like the discovering candidates on the front end of the sourcing piece yet. Kind of the outbound, the outreach sourcing side of things.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like, if you're talking about like the talent mapping side, where you're trying to, you're gonna, like, I see recruiters, like for example, Mike Cohen, I think, put it well. He said you've got talent mappers and you got sharpshooters. The sharpshooters are going to really target, 13 people, and they want 6 or 7 to reply, and they're going to be hyper targeted messaging and,
Yep.
really focused. Then you have the talent mappers, which are going to like really go out and send mass email campaigns, try to get 100 people, send it to 100 people, get that deduced down to 40% response rate, and so forth, until you get to some people that are interested in the job and move forward through the process. I think some of the technology that's there right now in 2021, from what I see, is really interesting with the like email campaigns. I think it's becoming more common to be able to send a 5 or 7 sequence email campaign and set that up for a target list of people that you've pulled that might be interested in your job. And I really think that's kind of the something that I don't personally do frequently. We don't have the technology right now to do it, but it's just not, it just hasn't been part of our process to do message campaigns. We certainly do mass messaging, but just not the campaign aspect, which I think is what's really valuable. If you see a lot of the recruiters that do it, they'll say, hey, it was the 4th or 5th message that I sent somebody that they were finally responded on. And so it's that persistence. And when you automate that, I think that's where the secret sauce is in trying to get candidates that aren't,
and I think
that are passive. Yeah.
You might see some gains there when you start to shift your recruiting team too, and maybe have a little more specialties and things like that. That's where
exactly.
When you start to hire your first sourcer and you kind of distinguish sourcing from then all the other steps you mentioned. That's an opportunity. We see companies hiring the coordinators around coordinating with the clients and all the on-site scheduling and some of that. That's almost a full-time job when you start to get into rescheduling and scheduling. Panel interviews and all that. And then maybe there's room for that marketing, right? That kind of hybrid role, to your point, the kind of the tools or the marketing or the, because that, even if you have the tools, you need the right content and the copywriting and some of that stuff that's super important. So maybe that's a partnership with the marketing organization, right? And that could just be brand building for Onboard in general. And it's kind of nurturing and some of that cool stuff. But yeah, I think a good partnership with marketing is a great way to do that if you have limited staff or capabilities. But then the bigger your team gets, that's where some of these interesting new roles are popping up in TA and recruiting.
I'm a big believer in sourcing and the value of that role. Actually, I just took on an summer intern that kind of training up on sourcing right now. And I think it's something that, especially if you have guys that are into like data analytics and business analytics, I mean, like sourcing is the talent acquisition equivalent of a business analytics kind of function. So it's so right up that alley. But I don't know if guys or girls go into let's say a business analytics career thinking that they're going to get into talent acquisition. I just don't think I think sourcing is too much of a subset right now. It doesn't have enough prominence outside of the TA space for people to really get excited about it or understand what it does.
It's, I'll never forget like going into like one of the first source cons, and realizing there's all these people like me who are very curious about tools and the internet and like discovering hidden talent. And then you realize it's this whole subculture in TA, and, SourceCon and sourcing has now kind of developed into a professional role. And I think there's still that debate around, some of the best sourcers aren't necessarily junior recruiters. Some of the best sourcers are the most experienced senior recruiters who can be really, to your point, dialed in, precise about, targeting and messaging and get that person to bite and respond. And then get them into the funnel. So it's funny, people still think of sourcing as kind of this junior recruiter, and I'm like, wait a minute here.
Yeah, some people think, oh, you got to get them into sourcing, and then they can progress into becoming a good recruiter. I think that's possible, or that is an interesting career track to take. But it's different. The skill sets, I think, are different. The mentality is a little bit different. I mean, to be finding the candidates and maybe sending the first outreach, and how that's crafted. I mean, that's a whole art to that. But then actually engaging with people and trying to persuade them to consider a job change, and then negotiating job offers and dealing with managers. I mean, that whole element of recruiting, which is critical, that's kind of separate from the sourcing function. And, I think there are probably some people that are really good at sourcing, but not good at the other side. And there's other people that are probably pretty good at both, but like, you just can't do everything all the time too. So it's to be effective, I think, the like you're saying, the senior senior sourcers, man, they're just dialed into doing that function and just grinding it and excelling and going, continue to push their limits and think outside the box and find new ways to find candidates. I mean, that's fascinating. Yeah. And it is a profession in and of itself. But it's, what's hard though? I think it's hard to probably put a business case together and say, hey, if we hire one sourcer, a senior level sourcer, and we, how do you compensate them? How do you justify that role and how it adds value to the team? Like how you'd have to have some really good metrics to track, I guess, the effectiveness somehow. I don't know if that's really been clear.
It's not trivial. And I think the other thing, you have to really worry that kind of incentives internally are aligned. Like a recruiter needs to be excited when a sourcer brings them a candidate that they didn't already know. It's just kind of like that dynamic between external recruiters and internal recruiters. There's a opportunity to play nice, right? Doesn't have to be competitive necessarily or conflicting. I mean, I think there's a way to manage those relationships, just like figuring out the right incentives for sourcing teams and TA recruiting teams to work together to build those pipelines.
Just to finish out this topic of sourcing, sourcing is like the X factor. I mean, like if you could source good candidates, I mean, that's like you're 70% there. I mean, if you're hitting the target on what that manager wants, because you've been able to precisely source the types of candidates they want and then filter those candidates and process those candidates through your screening and realize, yes, their motivations are right for a job change and everything, but it's all starts with the first ingredients, which is finding the good candidates first, so
finding it and connecting the dots that this is a good logical next step for this person, right?
They're placeable. Right.
And if that's right, and assuming that you have a reasonable company you're representing, or maybe even a brand behind you that would resonate, or the industry you talked about, media buying. I've spent a lot of time working in ad tech, which is a fascinating kind of quickly evolving industry because it doesn't have as much government regulations as like the finance industry and things like that could also use real-time bidding and all that stuff that goes into it. But yeah, you find someone who's in ad tech, who's a senior product manager, and you reach out to them about a director level role, which could be a compelling next step in their career, in the right city and, with another well-known company. Like that's a logical next step for that person. And with the right message, they should bite, right? Or it's just not, timing is everything. So maybe it's just timing's off.
Yeah.
Let's talk, maybe transition a little bit more to the state of state. Here it is, July and July 2021. What are you seeing in terms of the lens of recruitment and hiring and so much to unpack? Yeah,
these questions are so interesting. It's an interesting question because obviously my perspective is limited to our company, our clients, what's happening with them, and I think it is a truth, though. It's a microcosm of what's happening everywhere because I'm hearing the same thing from everybody else in the industry chattering that there's just this huge boom that every company is all of a sudden, has clear direction on what they're doing in the future now, kind of post-COVID. And they had all this, but they had this gap now because they've had last year, maybe they had layoffs where they laid people off to try to, because they weren't sure what was going to happen. They weren't sure with the election, how things were going to shake out. And so they laid people off and they put projects and things on hold. Now, all of a sudden, they got clear direction. They're green lighting the projects to move forward. but they have half the staff or 80% of the staff they did before. And that 80% of the staff is also being overworked trying to keep up with what they were doing before and other things that have been put on them. So they're super busy. They're not as, they just don't have as much time to do job search, even if they are interested, because they're so busy. But now you're getting into this aspect where everybody's hiring, and it's like, just like the real estate market is really hot. You know, when a candidate puts themselves out there, like, you know, on a job board or even on LinkedIn, open to work or something like that, where they're saying, hey, I'm interested in other work, or I'm available, I just got laid off. I mean, it's like that candidate is getting hit up so much. I mean, and it's giving the candidates a lot of leverage in the negotiation and in the equation. I mean, I have personally lost, I could count probably more than 5 or 6 like legitimate hires that I had where within a week or two of the job starting, the candidate got counter offers from their current employer that were really enticing. And I don't blame them for sticking around and staying with their employer because of those counter offers. It's very frustrating as the recruiter and working with your client. It's a very frustrating situation to be in, but it's hard to predict sometimes, and it's hard to always combat. What another company might be, what length they might be willing to go to keep somebody that's a good team member for them. And so you try as a recruiter, I think, your best to, especially early in the process, uncover motivations of why somebody wants, what's their push motivation? Why don't they like their current company? And then continually try to remind them of that throughout the process. Like, hey, the commute's an hour and a half. The commute's an hour and a half. Remember, this is going to shorten your commute to 20 minutes. Or somebody's underemployed and this is a big step up in their promotion and that's what they're looking for in their career, or they're going to get more time off with their family or something, like whatever it is, that's their primary push motivation, or what they don't like about their company or the environment. You want to, you try to probe that so that that if in fact they do get a job offer, you feel confident that they're going to step forward. But I found that companies are getting really creative with, when people are handing resignation letters in to try to figure out what those push motivators were and try to make counters to offset it. Like, for example, I had a candidate that was supposed to start next week for a big senior manager role with a good organization. And it was about a 2-month hiring process. And one of the primary motivators was the commute. They were going to commute. They were commuting before an hour and a half to 2 hours with traffic each way. And they were underemployed, meaning they were in a position that was below their level. So I got them a position that was, a senior manager position, well up. The commute was going to get cut in half. The pay was going to be significantly more. I mean, everything was green lighted, but the company came back and said, "Oh, we'll give you a promotion. We'll give you more pay. Oh, and by the way, we'll let you work remote 100%."
Yeah.
And so this person went from commuting 2 hours to now I can work remote 100%. Now you just took away their primary motivator to make a job change. And so it's difficult. How does
so they stayed at the company? They didn't leave.
In this instance, this particular candidate did, because the client that I'm working with is not willing to match the remote aspect, 100% remote. But I mean, that was the primary driver. So when you have to really be careful, really examine the primary motivator. And I found if a candidate, and I'm not the first one to ever say this, but if a candidate, I think Greg Savage says it more eloquently, but if they don't have a good push motivator, they don't have something that's pushing them out the door like they dislike about their current company, when they finally get the offer, even if you have great pull motivators trying to get them to make the change, if their push motivation is not there, they're likely to stay. They're likely to not accept the offer, or they're much more susceptible for a counteroffer if their current employer gives it to them. So
good insight. So uncovering that push motivator sooner in the process can be good leverage, and then differentiator.
But even more than that, you've got to stay close to the candidate and keep a pulse, because those push those change, right? Because you have other situations where, and this is again the state of what's happening, is somebody says, "Yeah, I'm willing to relocate to, this other location. I can't find work. I'm willing to relocate to this other state. It's a great job, great opportunity. Hey, is your wife willing? Is your family okay with this? Yeah, my family's okay with it. Everything's good." And then all of a sudden they go through the hiring process, they get interviewed, everything's good, they get a job offer, maybe they even are going to take the job offer, or they're at that stage, everything's good. Then all of a sudden company C over here that's 10 minutes away knocks on their door or then responds to them or finally engages with them. And now, wait a minute, that's changing the equation for them, because before they were willing to relocate, but now if they don't have to relocate, they don't want to, because this other company is going to give them an offer that's going to be closer. And so I've seen those kind of scenarios play out where, candidates essentially, their motivations are evolving pretty quickly depending on, how crazy the market is. So when you first engage with them, they feel one way, but then as they get other companies start coming to the equation, now it's competitive, and now they have their pick of whichever company they want, and maybe another company has a better offer, better package, whatever.
And I think about, so if that candidate you found originally on a job board or that was open to work on LinkedIn, you can almost just assume they've got 10 opportunities, that they're probably considering at this point, right? Which might have been very different than, a year ago, or even just kind of normal state 4 years ago,
Yeah. And it's you have to try to you're assuming that you have to assume that it's going to be a competitive fight to get that candidate. And so that's where I think the passive sourcing, the going after candidates that aren't putting themselves out there, that I think is kind of in my opinion, the next level of avoiding that, or just to that's going to be valued even more than it has been in the past. Finding candidates that aren't putting themselves out there, finding those candidates that are in their minds, I might think about a job change, but haven't yet taken steps to go there. Yep. I mean, those are kind of those gold nugget candidates. When you find those, you're like, yes, because it's very unlikely that they're going to get solicited from other companies. Then all you have to worry about is the counteroffer of their current company. But again, I think that is going to be put at a premium, and I think companies will continue to pay for recruiters and recruiting services to find those candidates that are less competitive.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn's made it so easy to just toggle that open to work filter on the left, right? If you've got, I assume you have LinkedIn Recruiter Seat or something like that. So
no, I'm Sales Nav.
Sales Nav. Okay. Same with the LinkedIn Lite, LinkedIn Recruiter. I mean, there's these toggles, these kind of pretty powerful little, maybe open, like more likely to respond is an interesting filter, right? They can probably understand if that person on LinkedIn has looked at some jobs and stuff, right? They haven't flipped the open to work toggle necessarily, but maybe they've done some browsing on the LinkedIn job board, which might signal that they're. So anyway, those filters though, I mean, you can imagine most recruiters, and I'm not going to use the term lazy recruiters because it's an amazing feature and it's an amazing filter, but that open to work going from 100 applicants that fit your search to the 20 that are open to work, you can assume most recruiters are clicking that button and reaching out to the 20 just because that used to be actually easier and more likely to respond and that kind of thing, versus those 80 that are just in the general filter but not open to work. Nowadays, that might be a better option, a better approach to actually close. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, and with LinkedIn, it's been interesting to see the dynamic shift with the 100 connections a week limit that they put on recently. I mean, that's, I think, a huge change in our industry, because you've had a lot of recruiters that I think, how do I say, I've always viewed it like there's been recruiters that have automated their connection requests,
sure,
and uses different software to do that. And they've been, consistently, let's say connecting with, 300, 400 people a day. And now they're limited to only 100 a week. I always shied away from that. One, because it was the concern with trying to, not wanting to get in trouble with LinkedIn, but also just I felt like it was wrong. Like, I came from an athletic background. I felt like that's like taking performance enhancing drugs. That's like, being on steroids. Like, a recruiter on steroids was automation. I had a lot of pushback from other recruiters on that, if you automate, you'll be able to spend more time on the phone, which is delivering a better service to your candidates and your clients. And you can spend more time on the phone, less time outreach. So I get that side of the argument. I think that was persuasive, but I still kind of felt like it was like I'm taking steroids, and or other recruiters aren't playing on the same level playing field. Like, I feel like, so when LinkedIn went in and said, okay, you can only do 100 reach connections a week, all of a sudden now I feel like they stepped in like the regulatory authorities in the Olympics and said, okay, we're banning all these substances, and you can't now spam everybody. I think in idea it was great, but the people that have used it, I think, were probably a lot of recruiters probably. And
yeah, it's a tricky decision, and they probably have a bunch of data to back up why they went that route. One being, their platform lives based on the success of recruiters contacting candidates, and this being a good, healthy thing to pay $7,000 a year for, in terms of, providing value. So if they, but I think they're probably also throttled that to get more people to pay for those search licenses rather than connecting to a candidate first. And then once your first degree connection, you can send them a message about the opportunity and not have to have a recruiter license and such. I think to your point about just the state of the state earlier too, I think timing, even from first contact or first phone screen, let's say with a candidate, after that, getting someone through that interview experience, meeting the different stakeholders, however many it is for your company. Have you seen the need to kind of expedite that or simplify that process of just how many conversations do we need this person to have before we're able to make a decision as a company?
Yeah, I think in my perspective, mine is always typically kind of short. I mean, it depends on the customer and because we kind of flex to their interview process.
The process, so, okay.
But a lot of times with the contractor positions, it could be 1 or 2 rounds of interviews. So it's not typically, it's been, the direct placement, obviously, that's going to be a little bit more intensive. Sometimes there are multiple panel interviews, or you have to set up, maybe they might have 5 or 6 rounds of interviews with different people. That can be pretty elaborate if it's a higher level position. But yeah, so I can't really comment probably really well on that process and how many interviews we need to have or trying to shorten that. I think it's in the old adage is time kills all deals. So the more time there is from initial engagement to job offer to job start, the longer that time is, the more things can go wrong. And I think every recruiter would agree. We would love to just, nail the candidate, know that they're the right fit, present them, get them screened, present them, line up the interview as quickly as possible, get them the job offer as quickly as possible. I mean, we would love that to be as fast as possible because we know that less things can go wrong, less opportunity for other, but it's not always in our control. I don't know if it's going to be us to promote that to companies as a strategy, but it could be to try to make decisions faster. But
yeah, harder as an external recruiter than an internal corporate recruiter. But it's even hard for internal corporate recruiters to have those conversations and, change assumptions or in that consultative approach that we talk about a lot in recruiting is like, how do you inform hiring managers and get them to change their thinking about hiring or their, the process behind it?
Well, video has really changed the dynamic. I mean, I can comment on that. I mean, video before, to get a manager to agree before COVID to a video interview as the final round interview was pretty much non-existent from my experience. I mean, almost everybody just assumed you wanted to have an on-site interview, and that took a lot of coordination. Sometimes you had to fly somebody somewhere, depending on the role. So that was a lot of coordination, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy that lengthened the process. I still think there's a lot of value in the on-site interviews, especially if it's a manufacturing position like I do. But so many managers now are just so comfortable with doing the video interviews. I think that's really helped to expedite.
That's great. So you're able to submit a candidate. They do maybe 2 or 3 or 4 separate video calls, and they're able to make a decision and say, "Yep, we'd like to."
Exactly. We can make a job offer right off of the video interviews. So I think that's been a really great. I think that's been an involvement that I think probably more companies are seeing too. But video also, Nick, has been. I've actually used video more and more in my recruiting outreach. I think that's kind of when you talk about what other tech and stuff, can we use as recruiters or 2021, I think video and audio, for example, I don't know if every recruiter knows this, but on your phone, if you use the phone application with LinkedIn in the messaging feature, you can record a 1-minute audio message, like a voicemail to a candidate. You can't do it on the web platform, but you can do it on your phone. And it leaves this nice little 1 minute, up to 1 minute long voicemail, as long as you're a first degree connection with a candidate. And it's a nice way to you send a connection message and then you follow it up when they connect with hey, thanks for connecting. And, if there's any way I can be of service to you kind of thing. And it's a really nice personal touch because you're using their name. and/or, I'm a big fan of BombBomb and some of the other tools that are video where you can, Vidyard, I think you use, and there's like you can put yourself on the screen, put their LinkedIn profile on the screen, talk about them for 30 seconds and why you're, and talk about their career. You're basically putting them and shining a light on them and saying, I created this 30-second video just for you. I think it's worth us having a conversation. And then finding ways to send that to them either via email or LinkedIn or other methods. But it's those, I think those tactics are becoming more and more useful to stand out, because not every recruiter is going to do that.
I think you're totally right. That's kind of going up against that whole thing of automation, right? We've automation for the past 10 years, was positioned as this good thing. And it can be in certain areas, but then for the recruiters who go against the flow and say, no, let's actually have a phone call. Let's talk. We're seeing a shift from companies who have tried these one-way interviews for the last 5 to 10 years, sending the candidate a link to record themselves answering questions and things like that. It's like, I think most people have come full circle that no, pick up the phone, have a 7-minute call, make that relationship, that rapport, to your point, and then you're showing them that they're worth the time. They're worth the time to make that little specific video, with their profile on it. You're worth the time to send that voicemail through LinkedIn, which is a great recommendation, a great tip, especially for people that accept your invite instead of just saying the canned thank you,
right?
Or doing the salesy spam email right soon after they connect, which nobody likes either. Maybe just that voice thank you is a good compromise there. So I think that's a really
absolutely great it's great. I think I've always gotten a lot of positive feedback from that.
Yeah, I think there's this new interesting topic in our space that this kind of automation versus now engagement, right?
Yep.
Where there's these kind of competing demands, and we can automate. Let's automate the tedious stuff, the scheduling, the paperwork at the end of the process, right? Let's have a link we can send someone to sign docs. Like, that makes sense. But then some of that engagement stuff where it's still human to human, we strongly believe that the conversations still count.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's the X factor in the whole process. And if you're sending so much if you're automating the whole process and there's no human element, there's no human touch, you're not going to excite a candidate. You're not going to engage well with that candidate, or it's just going to take you a lot more people to get through to finally land somebody. I think people are hungry for personal touch. The video audio element adds that personal touch. So it makes it human. And, people, I think, accessibility is a similar topic where, one of the tips I can give too is that I think we need to be more accessible, more accessible than we've ever been for candidates. So, for example, a candidate is looking at a job ad and they're thinking they're just going to apply to this job ad and send their resume to a black hole somewhere. That's the experience they have. And maybe they'll get a response, an automated response that's canned, that says, thanks for applying. We'll get back to you if we're interested. Or, maybe they just don't hear anything. Or maybe they get a response from a recruiter, right? But they don't know. Well, what if in your job ad, you put a little thing at the top that says, hey, do you want to talk instantly about this job? Message me here on LinkedIn. Boom. How simple is that? And now that you have a candidate that's engaged because they're interested in your job, you're telling them, hey, you have questions about this? Before you apply, you have questions about this right now? You're interested? Message me instantly. I will instantly chat with you right now about it. And I don't know anybody else that's done that, but it's a tactic that's worked tremendously for me over the past year or so, because I'll get tons of people reach out to me. And the best part about it is it's different than when somebody picks up the phone and gives you a call and says, hey, I'm interested in this job ad, because you don't know as the recruiter who that person is on the other side of the phone. You don't have the resume yet. You don't have, it's just like you're trying to like uncover that. But when somebody sends you a message on LinkedIn, you invite them to chat with you on LinkedIn, you automatically have access to their profile. You could review, so you have the context to really know, hey, this person is somebody that I think could be a fit, and then you can decide how to engage that person. So you're talking with them through the lens of their experience from their LinkedIn profile, which is so much faster.
And I think you're right, and you're also curbing that concern that most recruiters have, where it's like, I don't want just any candidate to be able to book a 30-minute phone call with me. So you're kind of giving that intermediary where, hey, we can chat here. I can, if I see your profile and I see you're a great fit, I can quickly include my scheduling link in that to book a call, right? Or not if they, but at least, create that rapport, and maybe, they'll leave a good comment, or you've given them.
And then on top of that, the best, then it's like, what do we do as recruiters? We should add value. We should add value to every interaction.